Okay, dokes. I think it's. Let me see if I can adjust this a little. Okay. You guys able to hear me? Gotta test that, of course. So we shall see. And I will get one of the questions ready. Okay. I think there was another question, but hopefully, I knew I should have just taken a screenshot of it. Foolish, foolish. But I remember what it was, so okay, there's that already. So just let me know if you guys can hear me, and I guess we can get started. Got some mint tea, and I've got some Lady Earl Grey. I really like that. Sight and sound, fantastic. That's okay. Caps lock happens. Honestly, it's a little easier. I might have to whip these out without the fingerprints, but these might have to start up here. Hi John, how you doing? I thought dressing all in black would be a little too on the nose, so just kind of went for the white here. All right, so we're gonna talk about death and just about death, I guess. I think there's a lot of thought that people put into it, and I think that a lot of us understand. Unfortunately, religions tend to exploit that fear of death. So I guess we can just start out with, what do you guys think about death? What's your thought on the whole concept? Does it scare you? Is it one of those, well, I probably won't know that I'm dying, just statistically. So it doesn't really scare me. We all have to die. It's just part of life. I look forward to death for whatever reason. Is there any feeling that you guys have about it? Again, I'll just take a break and enjoy my tea. So we will see that, and while you guys are doing that, I'm gonna go ahead and pull something up real quick. I did not think to pull up. Let's see if we can. I think these are some questions on death that people have, but I think it's for the actual process. Oh, it's about contemplating and interesting stuff. Okay. After I became atheist, I had to grieve twice for my loved ones. I would agree with that. Yeah. I think we have this idea, in religion that, well, it's sad they're gone now, but at least we can see them again and, of course, spend all of eternity with them, right? So we don't really have to miss them. Our lives are but the blink of an eye, a blip in the scale of eternity. And so really these, few years that we're not going to be with them on earth, it's negligible, right? But I think as an atheist too, thinking about the way that I used to think about death and life and stuff, it actually is very insulting to life, isn't it? It's quite insulting to life to just say, well, it doesn't matter. There's an afterlife that's eternal. Death itself doesn't scare me. Maybe any pain that happens might scare me. Maybe a bit of sadness from FOMO, fear of missing out, from friends and family and how they'll feel. Okay. I'm good with an ending and a cease of existence. Every creature will taste death. Death has a taste. I wonder what death tastes like. Do you taste like copper or something. Is that what you're talking about? Are you still atheist? Yes. Yes, I'm still atheist. The picture used from Dark Throne, I'm actually not sure. I was looking for a PNG. It's actually a little meme sort of thing that I made. I had posted it in the Discord, and it was basically just something that I was talking about, calling it like a death anniversary to make it sound more metal and therefore less terrible. But it didn't work really. But I still thought it was kind of a fun image. But yeah, it's a death anniversary time for me right now, this time period. So that's why we did not have a live stream last time. I wanted to have sort of a raw emotions, let's go ahead and do it, because it's right around one of the special dates. And then I just thought, why do that to myself? Right? I mean, there's something, of course, to be said about being open, honest, raw emotion, and so forth. But it almost felt, what's the word? Not exploitative, not performative. It just almost felt like putting myself through unnecessary stress for the sake of what? Views? It's not like people are going to watch more because they're not going to know that, I'm crying in the middle of the live stream or something. For what? What would be the payoff there? Even if it did get more views, it's not like I'm not a monetized channel, so. I was brought up super religious. I remember as a teenager realizing it's not real, and it was extremely hard. I would get horrible thoughts of death and feel extreme sadness about it. I don't feel that way now, though. I'm glad you don't feel that way now. Now, I'm not that scared, but I am scared in some sort of way. I realize I won't know or have any worries. So I am wanting to live my life to the fullest and wanting to make the world better for others. Is Lee here? I am here. Summer, can you not see or hear me? You might, if somebody can tell Summer maybe to refresh. Or maybe she can read my thing. At Summer, can you not see, hear me? Okay. You may need to refresh. If Summer can't see that, then maybe somebody else can mention it to her. Yeah, I agree. I would like to make the world better for others. But of course, people start to ask, if you're atheist, then why would you want to make the world better for others? But then again, I was raised in that type of Christianity that was very apocalyptic. And so this idea of wanting to improve the world didn't even make sense in that religious, cult. Do you know what I mean? It wasn't like... there was even a point where someone had told me that we shouldn't need to care about the environment because, number one, the rapture is going to happen pretty soon, and number two, God gave us the United States, and so he's not going to let us mess it up. Therefore, we don't need to have environmental protections. No, still says offline. I would try refreshing. If not, restart. All right. That's weird. I wonder why that's happening for Summer. I think, for me, in terms of death, just the event, I've been thinking, of course, a lot about it. And one of the new thoughts I've had this year is it's such a big event, and most of us aren't even going to know what happened, which is odd, isn't it? We know when we have these big events in our life, we know, except for maybe birth, right? But there's all these photos of our birth that we could see. There's people that were in attendance of our birth that can talk about it. We can learn more about, the process of birth and stuff as well. But it's just, the idea that we can't know when we die, that's such a weird concept, right? Isn't that weird? We know these other milestones in our life, when you learn to ride a bike or graduate your earlier education, if you go to college, when you get your degree, if you get your degree, when you got your first job, or if you have children, or if you get married, or, buying your first house, or at least renting your first place, the first time you have to pay rent and those things. These are all these big life events that we know, and then death is the one that's probably one of the biggest life events, right? And then we're not even going to be aware of it. I don't know what I would do being aware of it necessarily. Would I celebrate something? I think I would. I think I'd have like a party. If I knew, hey, you're going to die at this time and date, I think I might have a party, or at least get some stuff together so that way some of my thoughts can be lasting after I die, something like that. But it's just such a weird concept. Most of us, just statistically, we're just going to go to bed one day, and then that's it. That's it. We're just sitting one day and taking a nap, and then that's it. Or we're driving in a car and looking to the passenger, and maybe we'll get T-boned or something and just die. So all we know is just we're driving, talking to somebody, and then that's it. And that's just such a weird concept. And I wonder too, because the person that I'm remembering for this death anniversary, they did not have a quick, instantaneous death. Did they know they were going to die? Does anybody know that? Do they just expect this could be an outcome? Because I've been in situations where, I could have drowned. And the only thing I'm thinking is you gotta, right yourself under the water and get back to the surface. Which way's the surface? This way's the surface. Go towards the surface. Do you know what I mean? There was no thought, even though I was religious at the time, there was no like, oh God, please help me. God, let me come out of this. There was no panic. There was nothing. It was just, which way to the top? Go to the top. Get out of the water so you can breathe. That was it, Or when I was in boot camp and I slipped while we were doing this rappel tower, which is about 65 feet, so I don't know, 20 meters-ish above the ground, and you're only suspended by a rope that you wrapped yourself, which you've never wrapped before, okay? You don't know what you're doing. And I slipped and just hung upside down all of this way above the ground, and there was no net or anything. And I didn't freak out. I just thought, get your boots on the wall, you look stupid. That was it. There was no fear to it. There was no, oh my God, is this going to be it? And am I going to die? Am I going to fall to my death? It was just, fix it. So I feel like if maybe I was in that situation that this other, this individual was in, would I have just thought, okay, deal with this? Or would I think, oh my goodness, this is it. I could really die. So I don't know what they were thinking. I know my thought process isn't super common, so I don't know if that's what other people think. But let's see what you guys have to say here. Death is a dreamless sleep. I've heard it expressed that way. I don't know if I would describe it that way. I don't know. Because, what is that, right? What is it? So the reason I don't know if I would describe it that way is because I don't feel like that helps me process it or comprehend it any better. I've been put under for surgery, and you're just tired, and then you're waking up. There's no dream or anything. There's like as if time didn't even pass. So I guess that's what death would be like. But it wasn't like anything. Do you know what I mean? There was no passage of time that I could perceive while I was under the anesthetic. So to describe it as a dreamless sleep, I guess you could, but I guess in my case, what I'm trying to say is I don't see the purpose of that explanation. The rapture, ever hear of the guy called Rainbow Head with the shirt that said John 3:16? I have not. Neither does death love the young ones or respect the elderly. Neither is it scared of worldly bosses, nor does it seek permission for kings to enter their court. Okay, that's true. Death happens. The ending you might not see coming. I guess birthdays are just a celebration that we haven't died another year. That's what I tell people. I tell them, you made it another year, and I'm glad you're still here. I don't like the happy birthday thing. I think it's too generic, and I don't know. I don't like. And again, other people have a different thought process, I'm sure. If somebody wishes me happy birthday, I understand that they are giving me a well wish, but it's also very, I don't know what to do with it. It's kind of generic. Even people that you don't know, if you post something on something publicly on social media and you say, hey, today's my birthday or something, everybody will wish you happy birthday, even though they don't know you. So that's why I think it's too generic. Same with like, thank you for your service. When people find out you're in the military, okay, you don't know what I did. Maybe it's not worth thanking. It wasn't for your benefit. So what are you thanking me for? I think it's just way too generic to be meaningful. But again, I guess other people, I understand that other people don't think this way. So if you guys ever say something to me and I ask you, like, what was the purpose of that statement? It's not like I'm not offended. I just really don't understand. I really genuinely don't get it. Yeah. So I don't know if this is any different for the me processing the death. I know that the fact that I don't believe in a religion anymore definitely makes it different from how I interact with my family on the concept. But I had visited for the funeral when it happened, and it was, again, it was hard because my grief process was very different. I just kind of shut down, and I just kept sleeping. And my family, like my extended family too, some of them didn't understand that. They thought, oh, it's because of the jet lag, because you're on such a different time zone from us and whatever. And I was like, no, I'm just shut down. And they were like, well, then come spend time with the family. It'll make you feel better. No, that's not my process. And eventually I just said, it is the jet lag, Oh, okay, no problem. I'll let you sleep. Well, okay. I very much shut down. Some of you that I communicate with more frequently, you may have not seen, I might not have responded to you, especially if you sent me private messages and stuff. Or if we're in a group chat or something, I'll just kind of post stuff that's related to the group chat, but I don't really add a lot of commentary. Yeah, I just shut down. I don't know. How do you guys deal with it? Do you guys shut down? Do you talk about it? Do you drink? What do you do? Let's see. Whenever it is God's will, death rips and tears apart the worldly obstacles and reaches the concerned person. I mean, I don't think most of us in the chat believe in God, so this concept of God's will is not helpful. You know what I mean? It's not a helpful way to describe it. I died in 1992, no NDE that I can remember. Next thing I came to with a painful chest, for sure. I've known someone who died. It was a customer of mine. And they just talked about how different they were. No NDE or anything. He just really wanted to work out more. He was this older guy, maybe in his 60s, maybe 70s, with this cane. One of his hands was always like up here. The muscle had atrophied in a weird way. I think it had lost too much oxygen or something while he was dead. And so it had just he couldn't move it anymore. So it's just there. He could kind of function the fingers, so he could kind of hold something, but he couldn't do anything with his hand. And one of his legs didn't work very well. Again, it was that just an effect of the death. And he was just, interested in working out because he's got to keep the rest of his muscles maintain, and so he would buy all these like BCAAs and like protein powders and stuff. Um, but he had told me that he was kind of mad about the fact that he had died and had not died, that he was still alive. He was not resentful of the fact that he was alive. It's not like he had intended on ending his life and he came, he was resuscitated or something. He had died, I think it was in a car accident or something like that. And he was just resentful of the fact he had died and then he came back, because he said everything was different. His body was different, the way he processed his thoughts were different, and he was resentful of that. He was doing his best with what he had left, but he was angry about what he lost, and sort of this idea that nobody really mentions that when they're talking about, oh, the person died on the table, then they came back. The only time we really care to talk about that is if we're sharing something that was scary that had happened. I was waiting for my mom in surgery, and oh my gosh, she had died, and oh, it was really sad, but then, oh, she was saved by the doctors. That's the kind of way we would talk about it. Or if people are talking about like a near-death experience and they want to share their experience. But we don't really talk about what the person lost, when they were under. And of course, we think of kind of the extreme. They came back and they're totally fine, or they came back but their brain had suffered severely and now they're in a persistent vegetative state or something like that. But we don't really talk about, oh, I'm back, but I lost some function and I lost some mental function. And I don't like that. We don't talk about like the chronic problems that come after that. And I think we should. I think we don't like to think about it because it could happen to anybody. It could happen to any of us at any time. And I think that that's one of the issues with my medical problems. A lot of people want to tell me how to fix it. Just do yoga or just try this alkaline water or something. And they don't accept the fact that it doesn't work. They don't accept the fact that I did try it and it doesn't work, because they want a solution in the case that they are in that situation. They don't want to live the way that people like me live. Let's see. In those right to die countries, people actually party with close friends before and during the injection. I believe it. I would do it. I'd listen to a bunch of my favorite songs and stuff. Excuse me. So, yeah. I made a depression comment above. I think it's pretty important. I actually think my depression is part of the reason I'm not really that scared of death too much now, as long as it isn't really painful. I think even if it is painful, that it's just gonna stop. So there's that. But yeah, I can understand, with depression, it would almost be a relief. And I know that's with a lot of issues of ending one's life. It's not that the person wants to die, they just want to stop suffering, And so this idea that, well, all these issues going on in my brain that I can't fix and I hate, at least there's an end to it, The only fear I have, hang on, it jumped down, is leaving a mess behind for others to clean up. Yeah, I've thought about that too. And I also started really like throwing a lot of stuff away. I think you're thinking like a bodily mess, but I'm definitely cleaning up my home a lot. I'm throwing out a lot of stuff because I think it's just kind of that, that thought that if I was hit by a bus on my way to work, I don't want to burden people with having to sort through all my junk, all my little Hello Kitty trinkets and things. So I've just been tossing stuff or donating stuff. It always weirds me out to know that humanity will continue after I die. I'll miss hundreds, maybe thousands, maybe millions of years of amazing things human will discover. I agree with you there. There's 2 points there. After I had come back from the funeral and I was going back to work, the students were little, so they were maybe 8 years old. And so rather than explaining teachers, teacher came back from a funeral and teacher's sad, please be nice. They just said teacher's sick. Teacher's very sick. So please be quiet and good for the teacher. And I was told that they were told that before I had entered the classroom. And that they had promised they're going to be good or whatever. And so I went in hopeful, but of course, 8-year-olds are 8-year-olds, and they all got crazy and angry, and I was kind of spiraling down this hole. And then they had started to get kind of crazy and loud and everything, and I was so mad that my world had stopped, but nobody else's world had stopped. And here I was having to deal with these kids that are just having a good time and whatever. And then I was thinking that I was just going to yell at them to be quiet. And then I thought, you know what? I'm glad that they're not suffering right now. I'm glad they don't know what this pain feels like. I don't want them to know what this pain feels like. And it was almost like their ridiculous, everyday childhood craziness kind of was pulling me out of that hole. Like, it was almost as if I don't know how to describe it other than, like, if you get tinnitus and then it goes away, sort of that reversal of that feeling. When you get tinnitus, it almost feels like your ears are being blocked and then they get that ringing. At least it is for me. So it's almost the opposite of that, where your hearing is, something's going on with your hearing and then it's blocked and then it comes back to normal. And that's kind of how it felt. And I just was like, okay, let them be crazy. Maybe we can watch a silly video and that kind of stuff. The other thing, Chris, that your comment made me think about is I've heard people say I would never want to live forever. I think that would get boring, and I just don't agree. I would love to live for 1,000 years. I would love to live for 5,000 years. I would love to see what we invent, Think about the people that lived 5,000 years ago. They never would have guessed that. I mean, look at what we're doing right now. We're interacting while I'm hanging out in a room on the other side of the world from almost all of you. And we're just interacting with each other as if we were just hanging out together, practically. Imagine being able to go through all of that, those 5,000 years, those past 5,000 years of human history, and just to see everything, And then to look back and say, man, I remember when cuneiform was new. That was the new thing, and here we are. We got all these keyboards and all these other written languages and stuff. Like, imagine just how cool that would have been to feel paper for the first time, and to write something on paper for the first time, and to think, wow, it can't get any better than this. And then to have a typewriter that can do that for you. Wow, I mean, what are we going to think of next, And then to kind of go through all of this, and now we're, having these, the early, like, the flip phones. Wow, that's amazing. And then the flip phones where you could send a text message. Oh my goodness, and you're clicking those buttons, and oh, man, this is so cool. And now we can send a photo. Oh, and then now it's a smartphone. You don't even have to press a button. You don't have to click, the number 2 3 times so you can, type the letter C. Just imagine being able to live through all of that. And I don't know why anybody wouldn't want to. But then again, my hobby is learning stuff. That's my hobby. So that's why it sounds so exciting to me. For other people, I know that they have different hobbies, and perhaps they might get boring. But even if your hobby is like food or something, you think of all the different foods and fusion foods and food science and stuff that we'll come up with for another, what is food going to be like 1,000 years from now? Is it going to be pretty much the same? Is it going to be different concepts? Are we going to use, is it going to be totally vegan? Is that the route that we're going to go? Yeah, I don't know how someone is satisfied saying, no, we should die within 70 years. I don't understand that thought at all. I just don't. I really don't. Let's see, I've had close calls. Sometimes I was matter of fact, sometimes panicky, sometimes unaware. Yeah, the unaware close calls, those are the scary ones, I think. I was almost hit by a car, and I didn't know until the car had slammed on its brakes and then passed me without even barely pausing. It was a car driving on the sidewalk, which of course I don't expect, and I was just looking down at my phone playing Pokemon Go, and then suddenly there was a screech, and I looked up, and it was a car, like right there. And then I had, I guess, moved, and the car had turned the other, to get around me, and they just kept driving down the sidewalk. That was it. There was no, oh my God, are you okay? There wasn't, oh, I'm so sorry, or I was distracted too. Nothing. It was just, and they just kept going. That was it. And I was just like, oh, oof. And then I took like 2 steps, and I was like, no. And I bent over, and I said some bad words, and I looked back behind me. One of my students was there. And I said, oh my goodness, did you hear the words that I said? And they said, yes, teacher. I said, I am so sorry. And they said, no, teacher, I was scared too. Because think about that. If they would have just seen me get hit by a car, how traumatic would that have been for the student? That scared me. That had me shaken up for, at least half the day, at least. But when I almost drowned, I just wasn't, it didn't even occur to me to be shaky about it after the fact. And I just went back in the water, I personally don't think death is like sleep, because when you sleep, there's probably some kind of awareness there. Perhaps. I mean, there has to be. I've had dreams about stuff that's going on, like in a TV show or something that was on while I was sleeping. So there must be some kind of awareness, but again, I just don't think it's a helpful description. It's sort of like when people say, we don't know how the universe was created, so of course that means God created it, right? It's the God of the gaps thing. Okay, if that's how you want to explain it, but what did that do for us, like intellectually? What did we learn? Because we decided God did it. It doesn't do anything for us. Do you know what I mean? Let's see. Same for me. When I'm grieving, I either sleep or emotionally shut down. Yeah, it's nice to know, we're not alone. Summer says, I shut down when I die. When my dad died, I kind of went through the motions. I was numb. Yeah, I was definitely numb. So numb. And then in so much pain. And then numb again. And then in so much pain. It was weird. I mean, there's whole sections of the funeral visit that I just don't even remember, Realizing that religion is is made up is such a strange thing for me. It was empowering because I realized I had the strength, or its strength, to break out of those lies. I agree, especially because the lies can be very comforting, So to say, all right, well, I'd rather go through this in a different way, It's almost like taking off training wheels on a bike or something. Obviously too late now. Would have been cool if I could have a different CAT scan of his brain before and after to see what changed coming back. Yeah, I don't know if he had any CAT scans done before. I think he had some after, and there was just less activity in some parts of his brain. He knew that he was different, but me, if he never, I couldn't guess anything like that. It wasn't like he had a very strange speech impediment or something. It's not like he couldn't understand what I was saying to him and had me repeat myself, or he wasn't, there was nothing in his speech, either as speech or the content of his speech, that would have tipped me off to anything. So for him, it was like a personality change, I think. And he was upset about that. I can understand that, The person that you were, the person that you were cultivating, just got deleted. And now there's a new personality in you. And, imagine having to deal with that. I know that for at least some of you in here, you don't have to imagine. You went through that, but, that's got to be hard, for sure. And I think we need to talk about that as a culture. Because I think that the feeling is more like, oh, you survived, you should feel grateful. And I think that's very wrong of us to say. I don't think I have any right to tell someone how they should feel if they went through an event I've never gone through. Even if I went through it myself and came out differently, I still don't think I have any right to tell someone how they should feel, because they might be affected totally differently. My grandmother was very religious, and she had been pronounced dead, gosh, 4 or 5 times. And every time, it was always like, okay, kids, just grandma died, but she's back again. Okay. I know that sounds very Pet Cemetery-y. Okay, grandma died, she's back again. Just be aware of that. Be nice to her, kind of thing. And I would always ask her, well, what it was like. Grandma, did you see heaven? And she would talk about, yeah, everything was like streets of gold and there's trees everywhere and blah, blah, blah. And she says, and I can walk. She couldn't walk. And she was very happy about that. And she kept saying, the Lord keeps trying to take me and you keep bringing me back. Who's right? And as a little kid, you just, maybe it's time for grandma to go. Like, you don't really comprehend death. I mean, it's you go to sleep and you don't wake up, and the person is not there, or the animal is not there anymore if you have pets. But you don't really comprehend like the long-term repercussions of it. And so I just remember telling my mom, hey, next time grandma dies, just leave her dead. And I realized as an adult that was probably really hard for her to hear. I felt bad about that. But as a kid, it just kind of makes sense. Grandma's lived her life, and every time she comes back, she's mad from being, raised from the dead, kind of thing. She's happier. She can walk in heaven. Let her go to heaven. How could we hold her back from heaven? Especially as a child, when you believe in this heaven and hell and stuff, you believe you're going to see grandma again. It's not really a big deal. Let her die. Let her be happy. And then I'll see her later anyway. Do you know what I mean? Post TBI, traumatic brain injury, and being hit by a car, my mom died twice on the table and has tremors, memory issues, physical issues. Daughter died on the table and she struggles. Yeah, I believe it. Make use of the spare time before being too busy. Make use of the wealth before the arrival of poverty. Make use of the health before the arrival of illness. Well, that's assuming, of course, that you get wealth. That's assuming you get health. I feel like Amazing Videos, I feel like you're just giving a lot of very generic platitudes. We're here to have like a serious discussion. Not, hey, everybody dies and here's a way that I can wax poetic about it. We're here to have like a serious discussion. So if you're just going to kind of just share these incredibly generic, but also just factually wrong things, because some people are born in bad health. Do you know what I mean? Some people never are born into wealth and never achieve wealth. So that is, definitely something to consider. Okay, sorry. One of my students had texted me, and they were saying they couldn't access the thing. They were having a Wi-Fi problem. So let's see. All right. They said, wait, is it Saturday? Yes, it's Saturday. Bless you. It happens. It happens. Let's see. Before 5 things happen to you, benefit yourself from 5 things. Make use of the youth before the arrival of old age. Make use of life before death. Yeah, again, this is so generic. Amazing Videos. I'm just not going to read your stuff if you're not going to participate in like a conversation. Let's see. I hate tinnitus, even if it's mild, it's just persistent. Yeah, I agree. Even in pitch silence, especially when you're trying to sleep. let's see. I agree in my own way. I'm rarely bored unless I'm forced to do nothing like wait in line or sit and wait. And even then I can always find something to do or think about. Right. You just kind of let your imagination wander, Let's see. I agree in my own. Oh, sorry, I just read that. I was born before the internet. Yes, right. Maybe that's the difference, is some of us were born before the internet. And so we know how to entertain ourselves, but I think a lot of people here in this chat were born before the internet as well. The Man from Earth. Yes, that's a great movie. It's a really great movie. Let's see. Just jumped again. In Goodfellas, the gang planned to kill a guy, but they said forget about it in the last minute. I'm not sure what that was a reference to, but yeah. I lucid dream, full awareness. Death wasn't like that for me. That's interesting. You're dead, but you don't know that you're dead. Right. And I think that's the part I feel is unfair. It would be amazing to live hundreds or thousands of years. I worried that I'd be an old codger through most of that life. Well, yes, you would assume that if you're living 1,000 years, that is the lifespan. Do you know what I mean? So you're not like aging like a human where 80 years old you're going to be aged. And then now from year 80 to year 5,000 you're going to live and continue to age. We're talking more like the human lifespan changes. And so towards the end of that 5,000 years, that's when I start aging. That's the idea there. Let's see, right? I have the argument of are you lucky, or it's the argument of are you lucky for avoiding death or unlucky for being in that situation to begin with? Yes, exactly. It's, I'm not dead, but that doesn't console me in any way for, having lost a lot of my mobility and stuff. Do you know what I mean? I've had people say that, well, it could be worse. Yeah, it could. But this is worse than what I was. Do you know what I mean? So, yeah, it could be worse. My medical situation could be worse. But how am I supposed to be grateful for what could be if I'm having to experience what is? Do you know what I mean? What is right now is worse than what I was. So just because it could be worse doesn't mean that I should be appreciative that I'm demonstrably worse off. Do you know what I mean? And I think that's such a, again, it's one of those things people just say without thinking. I really wish people would think before they speak. I understand that there's sometimes, you just say stuff kind of off the cuff. You haven't really fully fleshed out the idea. But something like those platitudes that people just say, they're so common, you would hope that people actually consider, what am I saying? You ever heard of the book, The Top 5 Regrets of Dying? I have not. My mom and I talked about deaths and death today. We were discussing euthanasia, and my grandpa was resuscitated despite having a do not resuscitate. I was genuinely shocked to sway my mom. Sure, she had been on the border, but now she is pro-assisted suicide. Yeah, I think it's up to the person. I don't know if I would choose to do it necessarily, but I think that just because I'm not sure if I would do it, I don't think it's my right to tell other people they can't. It's nice to have the option. It doesn't mean I have to choose it, but it's nice to have the option, I think. Let's see. The worst part is when they were in a huge argument the last time you talked. You never really know when's the last time you talked to someone. That's true. I don't feel regrets about that. We did not have a very good relationship, and I don't regret that, because yes, death is going to happen, and we should remember that, and we should cherish the people in our lives. We can't live constantly thinking of death And so every situation and every interaction is so special and so wonderful. I mean, that's just unrealistic, you know? And then you never really get to know the person fully anyway. Um, we had very different personalities, and that's just what it was, you know? We argued a lot, and the way that I kind of think about it is if I knew that death was going to happen soon, would I have said the things that I said? Would they have said the things that they said? And of course not. Of course not. But if the death never happened, then we wouldn't be giving those arguments a second thought today. You know what I mean? So the way I think about it is that it's not that I'm unreasonable or bad, because if I knew that the death was going to happen when it did, of course I would have changed how I behaved. So I can't be faulted for behaving in a way that I did because I didn't have all the foreknowledge. Do you know what I mean? So that way I don't feel guilty about that. Would it have been nice? Sure, of course. But I mean, it'd be nice to be taller. You know what I mean? It's just you can't just keep wishing for what could have been or what have you, you know. You just gotta accept what is, what has been, you know. If I could return to full health, I would love to live a long life. That's, yeah, for sure. Is it a near-death experience if you think you're dying, but actually not? I had taken some shrooms in the woods and thought they were poisonous and I was dying, but I was just tripping hard. A near-death experience it's created in the brain. It's certain brain activity that happens during states of like low or reduced or lack of oxygen getting to the brain. So I guess I would say that if those brain patterns were really similar to what you were experiencing, then I would say you could classify it as a near-death-like experience. But to just feel like you were dying, no, I don't think that alone is the same thing as the near-death experience. Because the near-death experience is not, I almost died. The near-death experience is like the way that your brain reacts to a situation of reduced oxygen. Do you know what I mean? So it's not, I would say it's not as much the event itself, but the brain activity resulting thereof. That's the near-death experience. So when we recreate it in a lab, we can recreate near-death experiences. So that's without ever having the person close to death. So I think the experience itself is based on the brain activity. Yeah. Let's see, I hate that it's so dismissive. There's a tendency to do platitudes. I feel like, people give those because they say, well, I don't really know what else to say. It's okay to say that. If somebody says, like when people tell me I'm sorry for your loss, I don't know what to do with that. Do I say thank you? I mean, I know what's the socially acceptable answer, but you being sorry or not for my loss in no way affects it. So I tell the students, because sometimes we talk about death a lot because of the stuff that we cover in class, and I say, a good way to, if a friend of yours has experienced a death or something, just ask them, is there anything you need? Do you want to talk about it? Those are some things to say. Do you want to talk about it, or is there anything I can do for you? And sometimes I want to talk about it, and sometimes I just really don't. And I say something like, well, I don't want to talk about it, but if you can send pictures of, cute animals or something, or funny memes or something, that would be appreciated. But not just like, oh, I'm sorry for your loss. Okay, then then what? Are you saying that you're open to me talking about it? Are you saying that you don't want to talk about it? Where do I go next? Right? So, okay, I'm just feeling down. Why are you feeling down? Because this is a death anniversary. Oh, I'm sorry for your loss. And then where do we go with this conversation? Do we just say, so what did you have for dinner? Or, wow, crazy weather we're having? Or do you talk about it? Even if you just give the socially acceptable answer of, oh, thanks, then what? Are you still on the topic of the death? Is the person not wanting to talk about it? Is it triggering them to think about their mortality or a death they've experienced? You know what I mean? It's so vague and unhelpful in a conversation, I think. So asking someone, do you want to talk about it? Is there anything I can do to help? Is there anything you need? Something like that is, I think, way better. But just, yeah. Bye, Rex. Have a good one. My grandpa had ALS, lived 13 years, several after his death. That were horrific. Boy, that sounds awful. Let's see. My mom had someone she knew call her and tell her she was going to die the next week or so. What can you say in those circumstances? Yeah, I've had we have that a lot. Like our family has that type of experience a lot, where my grandma did that when she was going to die the last time. She had called my mom because she was at dialysis, and she had called her to say that she's dying. And my mom was like, what do you mean? Are the nurses being rude to you? Or are they doing what? And she's like, no, 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 no. I'm just dying. I'm just calling to tell you, and I'm dying and I love you and all those things. And she called my aunties, I guess. And then that was it. She just died minutes later. But I think she was sort of a frequent flyer. So maybe she could understand that she was going to die. But I've had my mom tell me about like an uncle who would tell me that he's dying. Like she told her, she called him up and said, hey, I'm about to die. And again, when you hear that, it's like, are you currently endangered? No, I just know that I'm going to die. Okay, you'll be fine. I'll see you later, uncle. And then hang up the phone and then they die. I think maybe some people can feel it coming, And I wonder too, will I feel it coming? And is it like one of those things? There's a lot of things that our body does with hormones and stuff, right? You just know this is what I should be doing, right? You receive a hunger cue. You don't research it. You don't ask anybody, hey, I have this weird pain in my stomach. What should I do about that? You don't need anybody to explain to you this is hunger. And so perhaps that's a feeling that some people get. Just like some people feel pain when there's no outside reason to feel pain. It could just be a type of perception some people have, and it just is released in the brain somehow, and they just say, oh, I feel like I'm gonna die. Yeah, and then maybe you just feel that. That's what I think. That would be my guess, my hypothesis for someone else to test, is perhaps there's just some neurotransmitter or some other type of signal that gets sent, and you just know this is it. Just like you never have to be taught what is lust or what is love or what is hunger or thirst. You just know, you know. Let's see. In an NDE, the person died. I understand thinking I was near death and it was just an experience, and therefore it's an NDE. That's just not it. Yeah, I think but the near-death experiences, though, I feel like there's a difference between saying I died for a set number of minutes and then I was resuscitated. I think that's a near-death event. And then the near-death experience, that's the one of you see something or feel something, or it feels like you floated out, like you dissociate, you know what I mean? I think that's the experience. And that one we could recreate in labs. So I think the death where you die for a few minutes and then you're resuscitated, I think that's a near-death event. That's how I would classify it. I don't know if anybody differentiates it that way. But that's how I would classify it, yeah. Let's see. So I am happy for you. Does it mean anything? I think I'm happy for you. I don't think it means anything from a stranger. Because sometimes strangers will say something like that. Um, but what is that? I don't know. It's sort of like saying you'll be in my prayers if a person means that and they're not saying it sarcastically. Well, oh, that sucks that you're going through that, you'll be in my prayers. I don't believe that those prayers do anything, but it's a nice concept that they want to include me in their, that they think they're beseeching a deity, and they think that the deity should give me a certain type of attention, like they feel like I deserve better or something like that. um that's a nice thing to say. You deserve better or something is a nice thing to say, and I think that I'll pray for you is a way to say that. um but other than that, it's just like, what does that do, you know so I'll typically ask a lot of questions for people, but I won't make those. I don't tend to make those statements. Sometimes I do. If I feel like there's not a lot to say, but I also feel like I have to say something just because I know, just, like a work thing, right? Maybe I don't know a colleague very well, and then I happen to be in earshot, and it's expected that I'm going to make a statement. I know that, oh, that's so great, I'm very happy for you, or oh, congratulations. Um, like when somebody is pregnant, that doesn't always warrant a congratulations, right? Because sometimes they don't want to be pregnant. Sometimes they're scared, they're surprised, they don't want to they don't intend to continue the pregnancy, so to just say, oh, congratulations, um, I try to gauge their face if I can, or, well, their tone more than their face. I have a hard time with the face. So if they sound negative, oh, do you want to talk about it? But I don't know. I'm more like, whenever someone's like, oh, I'm having a baby, or oh, I'm pregnant, and I don't know if what it is in a situation, like, is it a bad situation, a good situation? I always feel like saying, is this a good situation or a bad situation? Are we saying, how exciting or how awful? What are we stating? Yeah, but yeah, I don't know. I don't. Where does I'm happy for you take us next in the conversation? I think that's the hard part. The hard part is I'm happy for you saying, great, but I don't want to talk about it, or is it you saying, great, tell me more? So I'd rather just be told that. That's cool, but I'd rather talk about my thing, not your thing. Okay. Or that's cool, why don't you tell me more about it? Okay. Um that's how, just again, I know that I'm not an average thinker. So I know that this might sound very ridiculous to some people. Um let's see. Kind of unrelated, but I have the same feeling of sorry for your loss and responding to thank you. I know you're supposed to say you're welcome, no problem. It doesn't feel right. Right. Yeah, oh, I'm sorry for your loss. Thank you. You are welcome. Yeah. What do you what do you say to that, Um that's just weird. Yeah. I think uh I think one of the things that would have been better too, just talking about the death thing, is if we knew what the person wanted after they died. We weren't sure about cremation or burial. I think we were gonna do cremation, and then we decided on a burial, and I don't know how that was decided. Um, just mom decided it. She said something like, I just didn't like the idea of her being burned. So, okay, and that was it. For me, I feel like if she was burned, then we could all have some of her ashes, and then that would be a physical thing to remind her. But we all cut off some of her hair. but she loved her hair. So in a way, I almost feel like that was almost more disrespectful than burning her, just knowing who she was. But maybe that would have been her preference. And that's the thing, we don't know, you know. So I think people should talk about it for sure. I would like to be buried without the coffin and just stuffed with acorns. And then hopefully, as the tree grows, it'll take my skeleton with it, and then I can just like scare children from beyond the grave. And I think that'd be awesome. When I worked as a nurse, a lot of people knew in emergency medicine they take that feeling seriously. I would believe that. Yeah, I think if you even if you don't know why people know that the death is coming, um I think if you're surrounded by that in that kind of job, then you'd say, all right, a lot of people know when they're dying. This person says they're dying. Let's check their vitals and stuff. Let's see, from a stranger, it's kind of a disingenuous feeling. Maybe they really mean it, but it feels like a social formality. Right. I don't like that social formality. I don't think it doesn't add anything to the interaction, for sure. Um, I will say too, though, if you're ever in a situation where a friend or family member, or a friend like loses someone, and you don't really know the person that died, so you're not grieving yourself. You feel bad for your friend or your coworker or whatever, but you didn't know that person that died, so you're not also grieving. The best thing I think you can do is get them groceries that are easy to eat. Yeah, I think that's the best. You can't feed yourself. Like the way my brain reacted to this, I never could have predicted that I would be the type of person that just couldn't stand up. I just kept collapsing, just constantly collapsing. Anytime I went to the store, I just would start crying. If somebody talked to me, I just would start crying. I was a mess. I was an absolute mess. I remember hearing the bagpipes start to play, because that's the thing that if you're outside of the U.S., I don't know how often it is, but bagpipes usually play for a lot of U.S. funerals. Um, as soon as the bagpipe hit the first note, I collapsed. And I don't know if I fell onto anyone. I don't know if I fell onto a chair. I don't know if I fell onto the floor, like the grass. But I fell and just was screaming. And I couldn't hear anything. I was told later that the bagpiper wasn't good. And I guess other people were upset that the piper just sucked through the song, I guess. They were commenting on how the bagpiper looked, oh, can you believe what that person was wearing, or something like that. That thing could have been playing out of a radio for as far as I knew, because I heard one note and then I heard nothing. It was almost like being in a solitary soundproof box in a way. There were no people. There was no one else crying. There was no sound. There was nothing. And then the next thing that I saw, that I remember seeing, was the coffin being put onto that machine that lowers it into the ground. And the next thing I remember hearing was something, 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 just a sound coming from the pastor who was saying some words. And then, we do not grieve like the unbelievers, for we know that we will be reunited after death, or something. And I was just like, really? Because everybody in the family knows that I'm an atheist, and I know that's like a point of contention, and for my mother. And she had, apparently, it seemed as if she had told everybody possible at her church. And the memorial service and the pastor and stuff, they were all from her church. And so during this event, while we're having this memorial service and stuff, and like right now, I might stop talking about this because my chest is just burning, just the memory of it. I'm sitting here trying to be, like, I'm just floating through this church area where there's all these people. I'm just kind of floating around there, just totally out of my mind, just not even aware of my surroundings. I'm aware of my immediate surroundings, but nothing else. It was almost like a video game where your character has like a light, but the rest of it is like a dark cave, and all you see is like this sphere or this circle around your character, and that's all you can see. So you can't, like, you can see there's a chest here, but you don't know what's out of that light boundary. It could be a wall, it could be an enemy, it could be stairs, you have no idea. That's kind of how it was. So it's just kind of there existing. And then coming into my light sphere, occasionally would be just like a church person talking about why I needed to go back to God. Not the time. But for them, this was the perfect time to prey on somebody, when you're so emotionally vulnerable. But in their heads, I know as church people, they feel like they're doing you a favor to remind you that God loves you and don't you want to see them after you die, kind of thing. They think they're doing you a favor, but they're not. So to hear that while I was screaming before they lowered her into the ground, this jab, But I don't think they meant anything by it. It's kind of a common verse to read, honestly, at funerals. But I was just like, I don't know. I just screamed louder. That's all I did. I just screamed louder. You know what? Yeah, let me be the atheist. Let me grieve, This is my process. Like I just didn't care. I didn't care if they were judging me. To be fair, I had taken one of the low-level anxiety meds from my doctor. And so it was just like, that's why I didn't care, I think. I felt free to grieve. I didn't feel like other people were judging me necessarily. I just felt free to grieve, which was good. Which I do recommend. I recommend that, if you can get those meds for when you need them. I broke down completely at work last year before. This was before Corona, and I completely broke down. So I was just like, I don't know. And so I was just a mess at work. And of course you don't want to be a mess at work. So I had messaged my mom, and she said, well, do you have any, that medication? I was like, I think so. And she's like, well, just take half a dose or something so you can function. So I thought, all right. And I did. And yeah, it's one thing to avoid dealing with your problems by using medication or drinking or something to avoid dealing with those problems. But I think it's another thing entirely that there's nothing to deal with, right? There's no resolution to be had for this. This is not, avoiding talking to someone to deal with an ongoing problem in the relationship. Like, this is a death. There's no way to resolve that. So I don't think that something like that is inappropriate. And I think we should recognize that, we should normalize using those aids if you need them, Let's see. My brother's dog died today. It's the best dog ever. Yeah, it sucks. You can definitely connect with animals, and that's one of the things that scares me, is as much as I love my cats, I'm gonna have to see them go, and that really is hard for me. Yeah. My friend's funeral involved 30 minutes of people patting themselves on the back for introducing them to their church. Oh my gosh. That was another thing. There was a worship service at the memorial. Like, people were up there singing praises to God. And again, I get it. That's their process. I'm sure my sister would have liked that, quite frankly. But I feel like some of us should have been warned. So, like, for the extended family, all of us that weren't religious, we all, like, went outside. And we just were complaining mostly. Like, I can't believe they've turned this into such a religious event. It's almost, they made it more about Jesus than about her. That's what really, I think that's what was so frustrating. It was more about Jesus than it was about her. And we had started off with, hang on. The place we had started was, well, it's terrible, but at least she's in heaven now. That's what, like, a church person would say. But over the course of of the memorial service, it became, she doesn't even remember us in heaven. She's so happy and fulfilled. She's not grieving at all for us. What am I supposed to do with that? What am I supposed to be happy that you think that? I mean, what? So what? My sibling doesn't remember me? Is that what you're saying? Like that's your wise and godly advice. That's what you're coming at me with. You don't even know who I am, and that's your advice to me. Ha ha ha! It's fine. She's so happy she doesn't even remember you. What a thing to say to somebody. What a thing to say. Um, I mean, there was nothing I could say. I just kept walking away from these people because there was just nothing to say. I remember one guy had come up to me and he said, not to be religious, but something about justice will be had and God's vengeance or something. And I just remember it taking like forever for me to process. And I just looked at him and I said, how is that not religious to talk about God? He's like, oh, because God's just a fact. I'm like, my whole response was, I just walked away. That was it. There wasn't an argument. There wasn't whatever. It was just, what a thing to do. And I feel like again, if this is their process, that's fine. I'm sure my sister would have appreciated this whole church service approach, whatever. But I do feel like they should have warned us that we're not Christian to give us the option to not go. That's what I wish they would have done. I mean, just let's take it out of that church context for a second. I'm a stranger to them. And I had just lost a sibling in a very, very tragic way. The death was not. Very tragic way. She left behind some children. This is just not a good situation. So imagine somebody is at a memorial service and just strangers come up to them and say, here's my beliefs that I know you don't agree with. You're just interrupting my grief. What are you doing? What are you doing? You're just interrupting my grief. Like just replace it with anything else. Hey, did you know my favorite flavor of ice cream is mint chocolate chip? Okay. I'm in the middle of something, Hey, my favorite kind of pants are jeans. Okay, I believe that this year, this sports team is going to win the big event game. Oh, just imagine people just interrupting your grief to just tell you their personal feelings about something totally you don't even care about, You would never do that. You would know that's not socially acceptable. So why does that become socially acceptable just because it's a religion? You know what I mean? It's like that amazing videos person that joined us, We're sitting here having like an actual conversation about stuff that I've been through, stuff that you guys have been through. Some of you have been through near-death experiences. Some of you have been through death and all this. I mean, these are serious topics that should be given serious consideration. This person is just giving us the most generic things, so generic that they can't even, I mean, how is it so generic that it also can't even apply to certain situations? I mean, it's like, and then it's about God's will. I mean, read the room, Come on. It's just so ridiculous. Let's see. I touched my father's hands before they closed the coffin. Later, I imagine that microbes in my hand traveled in his hands and helped the natural process proceed. How did you feel about that thought? That's an interesting thought. Let's see. My heart aches hearing this. I fought back tears. You clearly loved her so much. I did. I think it was just it was in my own way, and I think that some people didn't maybe understand that we loved each other even though we didn't have matching personalities. We had very conflicting personalities. And I don't think I should feel sorry for that and rewrite history. Do you know what I mean? I feel like a lot of people have this idea to like canonize the dead. Don't speak ill of the dead. Well, what is ill of the dead? If I say something like, "Oh, I hate that person and I'm glad they're dead." Okay, I get that. But if I'm just talking about something that happened and I'm talking about a memory or a personality quirk or something, and it happens to not be a glowing memory or a glowing review of their personality, I don't think that's speaking ill of someone. That's remembering who they were. And I think it's worse to pretend none of that happened because you feel bad about saying something that might be construed by a passerby as negative. Do you know what I mean? And that's what I think. I just remember having that argument. I don't remember how intense of an argument it was, but I just remember getting into it with my mother because she would say something that just wasn't true about her, or at least that wasn't my perspective of how it was. And I was just like, I was upset that that I felt she was rewriting history. Now, of course, maybe she wasn't. Maybe her relationship with her, maybe my mother's relationship with her just was exactly as she said. But my relationship with her did not share that, and I was just like upset that she kept making it seem as if these negative traits didn't exist, and I felt like that was erasing her, because now all we have of her is a memory. And if we're changing the memory because it's more pleasant that way, I just feel like that's killing her memory. It's bad enough that she's dead. I don't want to kill her memory on top of that. And so when I say she wasn't very smart, she just wasn't. That's not me being mean about it. We had a lot of very hilarious conversations about that. Because she just wasn't a very smart person. I remember talking to her about something, and I said something. She mentioned something. I said, "Yeah, it's always about that double entendre," and she said, "What? Double what?" And I was like, "Double entendre, like innuendo." And she was like, "What?" It's like, innuendo, like for example, sexual innuendo or something. And then she turned again. What? And I repeated it, and I was like, and she turned again, she's like, "What's in the window?" Like, you can't make that stuff up. So anytime I hear somebody say that phrase, like, "Oh, there's a bird in the window," now I can remember that. That thing. And it wasn't like, oh, I made fun of her. Like, I laughed because it was just like, of course, this is who she is, and I explained it to her and she laughed too. This was not like a bullying situation by any stretch of the imagination. She just wasn't a very intellectual type of person. She's really good socially, which I'm definitely not. That's how she was smart. She was socially smart. But like with vocabulary or something, she just wasn't. Yeah. And she didn't like it when like she wanted other people to think she knew more than she did. Not the family. She didn't really care about that, but like other people. And so somebody was making a Silence of the Lambs reference. It was like some friend of hers or something. And so she called me up and she's like, "Have you ever seen Silence of the Lambs?" I was like, "Yeah, of course." She's like, "Okay." Because I told this person that I've seen it, but I've never seen it, and they keep talking about lotion, and I don't know what to do. And I was just like, "Well, just tell them that you never saw it and you misspoke, or that you were thinking of something else." She's like, "No, I don't want them to think that." Okay. So I made like I told her some references to use, and I like, here's like a 2 second synopsis of the movie, and here's a couple references or something. And then she had sent me a text later. She was like, thanks for explaining that. So every time I think about Silence of the Lambs, I think about her. You know, I don't think about the movie per se, but I think about her. And if she wasn't that stubborn, ignorant person, I wouldn't have these memories, you know? And I don't have to pretend she was a genius just because she's dead now. Do you know what I mean? So, anyway, let's see what you guys are saying. I can relate. When my grandfather died, my grandma's side was heavily Jehovah's Witness. They were a bit pushy at times, giving pamphlets and speeches. They meant well, but it didn't feel good. Right, right. And I think that's where we have to take a step back and try to understand that even though in their head they didn't have an ill intention, they also should have considered other people's feelings. They didn't. And that did not feel good, you know. Was it an immoral thing? I don't think so. Maybe it felt that way for you, and that's might be how it felt for you, but in my case I didn't feel that they were doing anything wrong, like morally wrong. But I just felt like it was incredibly selfish and like very myopic, you know. That's what I feel like. When we have someone in our family who at funerals assures the bereaved that the deceased is safely arrived in heaven and all is well because she saw them in a vision and they said so, I would just tell her that that doesn't happen until Judgment Day. We know that, don't we? Especially from the Book of Enoch that we were reading, right? Which we should finish next. But we know that you're waiting to be judged, so they're not in heaven. Let's see. What's up? I'm always late to these things. I need to keep up with the schedule or something. I do try to post. It's always around 8 or 9 my time. Today we started at 8 my time. So we're just talking about death. Yeah. I completely agree. It was hardly about my friend and her mother. They died together in a car crash. No, it was about magic heaven and being lucky. Yeah, absolutely. Let's see. Religion is a painkiller. You should be happy in an important being is no longer in your life and never will be again because their brain is gone. Yeah, exactly. It's I think it is in that case I don't know if I always agree with the phrase that religion is the opiate of the masses, but I think it would be really apt in this case because not only does it help with pain, but it also kind of gets you high where you're not thinking in a way that you normally would as a regular person, you know? Again, you would never interrupt somebody's grief to just tell some random belief that you have that you know the other person doesn't share. You just wouldn't do that. You just would never do that. But with religion, you know, what is this? This is your brain. This is your brain on religion. Some of you guys will remember those commercials. First time in a long time that I got notified by your stream. Sorry to interrupt. The dead really don't care. The dead only have meaning to the living. Okay, and what are you helping us with there? So this is the kind of thing. Again, I've heard that the dead, you know, the dead aren't grieving. We are grieving. Okay, so what are we adding to the conversation with that kind of generic thing? Sisters don't always get along or believe the same things, but I would be crushed if she died. We're estranged. Yeah, definitely. Nothing special about the moment. I guess I just accepted my father is dead and that his body will turn into soil like any body. That is interesting. Yeah. I have a couple rings. They were just kind of in this little pack, and the rings are each like they're just like a little circle. It's a little copper thing, and each one has a circle on it, and each circle is painted with a different planet. And because she was, you know, the beautiful sister, I put Venus in her hands, and then I kept the others, like Mars, because war, right? So that's what I have. And I know that when I touch it, she is still touching the other one. And I'm gonna cry. So I'm gonna take a sip of my tea and hold back them tears. But it's nice to have that kind of physical connection, I think that means a lot to humans. We like that thing to touch more than the thing to think, I think. Yeah. But I guess on that note, um, yeah, maybe it's a good time to just end the stream. Um, I don't know. I was just trying to think of some closing words as I do. Um, but perhaps there are no closing words to say. You know? And maybe it's better like that, right? Because death is sudden. And so too with this live stream or something, you know. What about being formed into an artificial diamond? You will exist in that form until the sun dies. That's true. That's interesting, but I think I would rather be in the tree, the skeleton tree. That's just more my style. So, anyway, I think on that note, we'll just